and welcome to Pricing College with your hosts, Joanna Wells
and Aidan Campbell. In the last episode, it's been pointed out to me that I sounded very negative. And so in this episode, that regarding tenders and why I dislike them, we'll say. And so in this episode, it's like, so you dislike something, what are you going to do about it? And in this instance, I think our message is how to avoid tenders whenever possible.
Yeah, I think avoiding tenders is probably, the conclusion to all of this. But I know what you're thinking. It sounds a little bit too difficult. How are you supposed to do that when there's like a process already set up and, we're sort of in a way made to do them? Well, again, I think it comes down to understanding the value that you offer and segmentation. Sometimes you need to know who to sell to and who to walk away from.
In many companies, I think we have this concept that tenders are inevitable. They're part of the job. They're what departments do, specifically in B2B companies. I know I previously worked in a company where we were looking after major national chains, and tendering was a very large part of the job. To some extent, I would think we should almost view ourselves as, if it goes to tender, that is a failure. We should not be. Senior management used to get excited about tenders and doing tenders. My view would be we should get excited about preventing tenders or not going to tender. We should almost describe ourselves as have metrics, which tenders have we avoided this year, which customers have we kept by not going to tender, by not going to market through ongoing value and delivery. It's just a different way of looking at it, but it will, over time, in my view, lead to keeping customers longer and higher profits.
I think you're right, Aidan. To a large extent, the tender process is a habit for businesses. It's a routine that teams go through, and it's an expectation that management have. It's like, if we don't go through that, that's going to disrupt the relationships that we have with our customers that we've built up over years. But therein lies the question. You built up a relationship, but yet you still have to go to tender with that company. Surely at that point, you have to question, the strength of that relationship. Would you really call a relationship with a customer a partnership when they routinely ask you to go to tender for something that you've been known to deliver on time? They keep coming back to you, but yet demanding a cheaper price. I wouldn't call that a partnership. And I think at that point, you've got to reevaluate that relationship and get realistic with where you're actually positioning yourself with your customers, and then start asking the question, actually, am I a vendor, am I a supplier or a partner here? And if I want to be treated as a partner, would I be going through this tender process? The answer is no.
I think you look at the time and effort invested, and when I say invested, I mean wasted, on both sides, on the company selling the product and service, and on the company buying the product and service. The other thing I will say, it's like, if you've got a long-term procurement deal with a supplier, it's almost a bit like, a long-term relationship or a marriage. And so you're working towards common goals. You're part of the supply chain. If you view it as what you've done is you've outsourced your supply chain as a company, and then the company who's won the tender goes and supplies that service to you to help your company deliver what they do to your customers down the supply chain. If you think about, say every 3 years or every 4 years, we're going to go to tender. That's our company policy. What that in theory does is it means for 6 months or a year leading into the tender, the relationship will fragment. There will be the amount of productivity delivered will decrease. And specifically when they know that when the supplier knows that you're out there talking to competitors, and that your entire proposal is to downgrade, to water down your offer, to hammer down your pricing, there's going to be a damage in that scenario. So that's the first 6 months leading into the tender. And even if you keep the supplier on, 6 months after, then there's that trying to reignite the relationship again and trying to get things back to normal. So what you're doing is you're undermining the relationship for a certain period of time.
I sometimes think when, a customer comes to you or to a business with a tender, what they're actually probably saying is that the relationship has broken down, and they're not telling you specifically directly, verbally to your face, but they're giving it to you in that document that's the sign that something's wrong. Because really they wouldn't have come to you in that way if you really were a partner. So what, as a business, should you really be thinking about a tender when that's handed to you? When you think that a business, a customer is a partner, you should be thinking, okay, what have I done wrong? Have we really delivered on time? Is our supply chain really that efficient? Are there any points in the last 2 years that we've been working with our customer that we've failed them in some ways? There've been some product failure. Has anything happened? Do they like the trading terms? And if you found out that that's true, then you can address it. But I think there's a lot of instances where companies don't know, don't ask those questions, and don't have the detail on it. So things just get sort of ignored, and daily operations continue. Your customers, put up with maybe services they didn't really want to get, to in a way put up with, and they go, well, and they don't want to tell you either what the problem is, so then they politely give you a tender document at the end of their contract just to show you that things aren't right. So sometimes that's another way of looking at it. So really the point of all of this is you've got to start looking at your business in terms of data, understanding where you deliver, where you possibly are underperforming, and then address it. You raise the question with your customers, so you have that feedback regularly, that conversation with them, so you know where you stand.
I think that really is fundamental account management. If you have a dedicated account manager on that contract, their job is to deliver increasing value, to keep the customer happy, to keep your business profitable, to keep prices up and revenue and profitability for your business up. But at the same time, it's to keep that relationship growing, hopefully to expand the any spend that the customer's making with you. And if there's bumps along the road, see them as far out as possible, prevent them. It's proactive, not reactive. Like tendering is reactive. If you've already been working with a company for 5-10 years, if a tender comes up, like why could you not have prevented that? What could you have done in advance? Like, we'll be completely honest, of course, in some companies there are procurement teams who just love a tender and there's nothing you can do about it. You can try to just explain, use your relationships in that other company, explain the value, but sometimes it just happens. But there's a certain percentage. Obviously pick off the low-hanging fruit. The more you can prevent, the better. If you can prevent more, you know what your customer wants, you embed yourself more in their organization, they become dependent on you more and more, and hopefully over time they'll see you as trusted. If the customer wants something else that they're not getting from the supplier, like, be open and let them talk about it, discuss it. If they want lower prices, theoretically, if they ask for lower prices and you say no, the last thing you should do then is in a tender process, give them lower prices. It's like, why did you not get them in advance if that was possible or that was on the table? So if it gets to tender, what you've done is you've weakened your negotiation and bargaining position and undermined the relationship, so that over time they won't even see you as a strong partner, really. And I think, it's a negative all around.
Yeah, I suppose, and that's what our position on this is. Like, why bother going to a tender if you haven't done the work in advance? At that point, you're both going to lose out, really. You're going to commoditize your service, and they're going to get something suboptimal that they don't really want, and expecting possibly it's going to be something else. So really have the conversations well in advance. In advance of what? Always have the conversation, so you don't even have to get to tender. If you're in the point of a tender, then have meaningful conversations, not like just 2 weeks before the tender's due. These conversations should really occur at least 9 months before. But what we're trying to say is if you keep having these real conversations about the value that you're offering and the problems that they have, then you're very likely not to go to tender. It won't go there. There will be exceptions, as Aidan pointed out. It might be just procedure, but very often they won't want to go through the cost of the tendering process either, because it's costly to them. They're not getting what they want on time. It's gonna, the total cost of a tender process is actually quite substantial. So it's a cost that they want to avoid, and they would avoid if they knew that they were getting what they wanted from you.
Yeah, I think that's what all I've got to add on the topic. I think real good account management is, let's put it like this: going to tender is a crisis. Let's avoid crises by preventing them, putting in place preventative measures and things should not come to that. Things should come to discussion, communication. If there's problems, if something's not going the way people want it to go, that's the way it should be. If your competitor supplier has come out with a new innovation or a new product and your customer has expressed interest in it, go back to your own company and see what you can do, or why your product or service is slightly better, or can you provide a similar service also. So be proactive, think about the bigger picture, and fingers crossed if you do that, you should avoid the cost. Always remember that running a tender from a supplier or a customer basis, running a tender, it costs time and effort. And time and effort is something that nearly any sensible company wants to avoid because it's unproductive.
But apart from just account management, I think account management really need to work with the pricing team on this one. And the pricing team needs to have all the facts in order so they can give account management the right information, the tactics to go back and inform the customer about various things, especially in terms of the trading agreements and things like that. But key inputs that all businesses should know is like what prices are other competitors charging. I know that can be difficult in a B2B environment, but roughly people do know, they do talk, and often account managers circle around the same businesses as well. So there's an understanding of what the average price is. What are the key value drivers that your customers keep mentioning? Put that in the CRM. So if a customer account manager leaves, the new one will know, key things about that account, and then can ask questions, probe deeper into it. And key metrics. What are your customers trying to achieve financially? What cost reductions do they want? Is that possible? How do they want to buy from you? Do they want to buy, from you using that sort of annual or 2-year long-term contract? Or do they just want to try? Or do they want a non-commitment sort of type of a contract, month by month? Is that possible? Why is that not possible? All these sort of things lead to very meaningful discussions, which you can track and monitor using data, and then translate that data into conversations. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks very much. Bye.